So an entity key will have one entity name and one entity attribute to it. Okay, at a given point of time. And variable dimensions. Variable dimensions do not cater to a single entity, specific entity, rather than that it is part of the entire workspace. Okay, and yeah, variable dimensions are not mandatory in a data set as well. So let us recap. So data is bifurcated into dimensions and measurements. Dimensions are of two types, entity dimensions and general dimensions. Entity dimensions have an entity key name and attribute. General dimensions are data and variable, so let us go through with data set types. What are data set types? We have broadcasting data, we have social data, we have search data, we have conversion data, we have web analytics data, we have plan data. We have what else we have, programmatic data we have. We have various data types, right? We have data set types. One is considered a social, one is considered search, one is offline, one is sales. So the various data set types. So broadcasting data is much different than social data, and then search data is different from social data as well. So these are the. They are different from one another. What is the point over here? Point is, each data set is different from one another, but it has a main entity. Every data set will have a main entity for itself, and it will have a set of dimensions and measurements. Now you will see that the main entity is different in different data sets. But there are times, there are times where we merge the data based on shared entities between two data sets, and when you have shared entities, you can go ahead and map, together the main entities. In one it can be a main entity, but in the other data set it can be a shared entity which can be, mapped together, and then both the data sets can be merged and sliced and diced together. There comes my favorite slide. So this is basically your ads data set. So whenever you upload in Datorama search data, social data, display data, they are all clubbed as ads data sets. When you upload a web analytics data, it is uploaded as a web analytics data set. But when you add anything, and there are data set types which we will see, but when you upload a sales data, maybe sales data is not a digital data, right? It is not an ads data set, or it is not a web analytics data set. So it gets clubbed as generic data set types. So generic data set types are nothing but data set types which do not fall under the defined categories in Datorama, but they are clubbed as generic, which makes them. Which is identical. But then in generic, everything is everything is generic. And then you have your data model fields, whereby you need to figure out what all are your main entities. What are your shared entities? So on and so forth. Cool, so let's look into the various dimensions and measurements. That gets attached to the various data sets, right? So in my ads data set I have the media, buy and clicks, campaign, creative site, etc. Dimensions for conversions are conversion tags. Everyone knows what is a conversion tag, or else we can keep it as a discussion. While we are wrapping up the session, someday, the training, we can talk about conversion tags. If you already know, then good. Else. Like you know, and if you already know, you can enlighten the entire crowd here, or else we can keep it as a discussion at the end of the training. Yeah, so in conversion tag we have conversion tags, we have media by campaign, and in measurements we have the, conversion post-impression revenue, post-click transactions. Search keywords. We have the search keyword, the URLs and placements. So do you see any common factor in these three dimensions and measurements? Media by. Media by, correct. So we were talking in the previous slide that we do bring in all the data sets together by means of the shared entities, and over here we see that media by is one of the shared entities. If we map it together, we can basically get access to all these dimensions and measurements which are there. Now, why media by? Why media by is being considered as the most important factor or the main entity for an ads data set and not campaign or not site. Why it is considered as the most granular part of the data. Let's verify that. Yeah, because for an advertiser, he wants to advertise like it might be through search or through social, or through display. So what he does is like he wants the advertisement space in the website. So media buy is important, the placement is important. Yeah. So that's true. That's true theoretically, but we need to establish it right. You cannot tell me that you know this is important. I will say that no, that is also important, or Anil will say that this is also important and we will have a fight. But we need to establish right. So how will you establish your fact? You will establish it through relationships. Let's take one of the dimensions in the ads data set called campaigns, and let's see how is campaign related to a placement. Okay, so one campaign can be related to multiple media buys. Right. So a single campaign can be advertised in multiple placements. But one placement is attributed to only one campaign. Correct. No, yes. Okay, let's look at it once again. One campaign master class can be. Master class is one campaign, right? But it is advertised in 3 different places, say Gordon Ramsay campaign, James Patterson campaign. Anything else, like any other creatives. These creatives can be displayed in a publisher website. It can be displayed in the top banner. The side banners. Bottom of the page, middle of the page, anywhere. Like in an on-the-click ad, anywhere it can appear. So that creative appears in multiple placements. Correct. So one campaign masterclass is displayed in multiple media buys or placements. But this one banner placement that we have on top of the page is attributed to the single campaign masterclass. Correct, so one campaign can get displayed in multiple media Buys. But one media buy is attributed to only one campaign. Coming to site. One site can have multiple media buys, as we saw the example of what. What was the site that we saw? New York Times, I guess. New York Times being the site. Yeah. So New York Times, being the site, can have multiple media buys. In its page. So if you open, so go ahead and try it with Times of India. My favorite publisher website.